Chapter 8. The impudent Brat Hassan, Beelzebub's grandson, dares to call men slugs. Hassan immediately sat down at Beelzebub's feet and coaxingly said, "Tell me everything you wish, my dear grandfather. Anything you tell me will be the greatest joy for me, if only because it is you who relate it." "No," objected Beelzebub. "You yourself ask what interests you most of all. It will give me at the present moment much pleasure to tell you about just whatever you particularly wish to know." "Dear and kind grandfather, tell me then something about I forget. Yes, about those slugs." "What? About what slugs?" asked Beelzebub, not understanding the boy's question. "Don't you remember, grandfather, that a little while ago, when you spoke about the three-centered beings breeding on the various planets of that solar system where you existed for such a long time, you happened to say that on one planet, I forgot how you called it, that on that planet exist three-centered beings who, on the whole, are like us, but whose skin is a little slimier than ours?" "Ah," laughed Beelzebub, "you are surely asking about those beings who breed on the planet Earth who call themselves men." "Yes, grandfather, yes, just that. Tell me about those men beings a little more in detail. I should like to know more about them," concluded Hassan. Then Beelzebub said, "About them I could tell you a great deal, for I often visited that planet and existed among them for a long time, and even made friends with many of those terrestrial three-brained beings. Indeed, you will find it very interesting to know more about those beings, for they are very peculiar. There are many things among them which you would not see among any other beings of any other planet of our universe. I know them very well, because their arising, their further development, and their existence during many, many centuries, by their time calculation, have occurred before my eyes. And not only their own arising occurred before my eyes, but even the accomplished formation of the planet itself on which they arise and exist. When we first arrived on that solar system and settled on the planet Mars, nothing yet existed on that planet Earth, which had not yet even had time to cool off completely after its concentration. From the very beginning, this same planet has been the cause of many serious troubles to our endlessness. If you wish, I would tell you first of all about the events of general cosmic character connected with this planet, which were the cause of the said troubles of our endlessness." "Yes, my dear grandfather," said Hassan. "Tell me first about this. It will surely be quite as interesting as everything you relate." Chapter 9. The cause of the genesis of the moon. Beelzebub began his tale as follows. After we arrived on the planet Mars, where we were directed to exist, we began slowly to settle down there. We were still fully absorbed in the bustle of organizing everything externally necessary for a more or less tolerable existence in the midst of that nature absolutely foreign to us, when suddenly, on one of the very busiest days, the whole planet Mars was shaken, and a little later such an asphyxiating stink arose that at first it seemed that everything in the universe had been mixed up with something, one might say, indescribable. Only after a considerable time had passed, and when the said stink had gone, did we recover and gradually make out what had happened. We understood that the cause of this terrible phenomenon was just that same planet Earth which from time to time approached very near to our planet Mars, and which therefore we had possibilities of observing clearly, sometimes even with our Teskooano. For reasons we could not yet comprehend, this planet, it transpired, had burst and 2 fragments detached from it had flown off into space. I have already told you that this solar system was then still being formed and was not yet blended completely with what is called the harmony of reciprocal maintenance of all cosmic concentrations. It was subsequently learned that in accordance with this said general cosmic harmony of reciprocal maintenance of all cosmic concentrations, there had also to function in this system a comet of what is called vast orbit, still existing and named the comet Kondoor. And just this very comet, although it was then already concentrated, was actualizing its full path for only the first time. As certain competent sacred individuals also later confidentially explained to us, the line of the path of the said comet had to cross the line on which the path of that planet Earth also lay. But as a result of the erroneous calculations of a certain sacred individual concerned with the matters of world creation and world maintenance, the time of the passing of each of these concentrations through the point of intersection of the lines of their paths coincided. And owing to this error, the planet Earth and the comet Kondoor collided, and collided so violently that from this shock, as I have already told you, 2 large fragments were broken off from the planet Earth and flew into space. This shock entailed these serious consequences because, on account of the recent arising of this planet, the atmosphere which might have served as a buffer in such a case had not yet had time to be completely formed upon it. And my boy, our endlessness was also immediately informed of this general cosmic misfortune. In consequence of this report, a whole commission consisting of angels and archangels, specialists in the work of world creation and world maintenance, under the direction of the most great archangel Harharkh, was immediately sent from the most holy Sun Absolute to that solar system Oz. The Most High Commission came to our planet Mars, since it was the nearest to the planet Earth, and from this planet of ours began its investigations. The sacred members of this Most High Commission at once quieted us by saying that the apprehended danger of a catastrophe on a great cosmic scale had already passed, and the arch-engineer Archangel Algamatan was good enough to explain to us personally that in all probability what had happened was as follows. The broken off fragments of the planet Earth had lost the momentum they received from the shock before they had reached the limit of that part of space which is the sphere of this planet, and hence, according to the law of falling, these fragments had begun to fall back towards their fundamental piece. But they could no longer fall upon their fundamental piece, because in the meantime they had come under the cosmic law called law of catching up, and were entirely subject to its influence, and they would therefore now make regular elliptic orbits around their fundamental piece, just as the fundamental piece, namely, the planet Earth made and makes its orbit around its sun, Earth. And so it will always continue, unless some new unforeseen catastrophe on a large scale changes it in one way or another. Glory to chance, concluded his Pantemeasur-ability. The harmonious general system movement was not destroyed by all this, and the peaceful existence of that system was soon re-established. But nevertheless, my boy, this Most High Commission, having then calculated all the facts at hand, and also all that might happen in the future, came to the conclusion that although the fragments of that planet Earth might maintain themselves for the time being in their existing positions, yet in view of certain so-called Tastartoonarian-displacements conjectured by the Commission, they might in the future leave their position and bring about a large number of irreparable calamities both for this system Earth and for other neighboring solar systems. Therefore, the Most High Commission decided to take certain measures to avoid this eventuality. And they resolved that the best measure in the given case would be that the fundamental piece, namely, the planet Earth, should constantly send to its detached fragments, for their maintenance, the sacred vibrations as cooking. This sacred substance can be formed on planets only when both fundamental cosmic laws operating in them, the sacred Heptaparaparshinokh and the sacred Triamazikamno, function as this is called Ilnosoparno. That is to say, when the said sacred cosmic laws in a given cosmic concentration are deflected independently and also manifest on its surface independently, of course independently only within certain limits. And so, my boy, inasmuch as such a cosmic actualization was possible only with the sanction of his endlessness, the great Archangel Harharkh, accompanied by several other sacred members of that Most High Commission, set off immediately to his endlessness to beseech him to give the said sanction. And afterwards, when the said sacred individuals had obtained the sanction of his endlessness for the actualization of the Ilnosoparnian process on that planet also, and when this process had been actualized under the direction of the same great Archangel Harharkh, then from that time on that planet also, just as on many others, there began to arise the corresponding, owing to which the said detached fragments exist until now without constituting a menace for a catastrophe on a great scale. Of these two fragments, the larger was named Loonderperzo, and the smaller Anulios. And the ordinary three-brained beings who afterwards arose and were formed on this planet also, at first called these by these names, but the beings of later times called them differently at different periods. And in most recent times, the larger fragment has come to be called Moon, but the name of the smaller has been gradually forgotten. As for the beings there now, not only have they no name at all for this smaller fragment, but they do not even suspect its existence. It is interesting to notice here that the beings of a continent on that planet called Atlantis which afterwards perished, still knew of this second fragment of their planet and also called it Anulios. But the beings of the last period of the same continent, in whom the results of the consequences of the properties of that organ called Kundabuffer, about which it now seems I shall have to explain to you even in great detail, had begun to be crystallized and to become part of their common presences, called it also Kimespai, the meaning of which for them was never allowing one to sleep in peace. Contemporary three-brained beings of this peculiar planet do not know of this former fragment of their planet, chiefly because its contemporary small size and the remoteness of the place of its movement make it quite invisible to their sight, and also because no grandmother ever told them that once upon a time any such little satellite of their planet was known. And if any of them should by chance see it through their good, but nevertheless child's toy of theirs called a telescope, he would pay no attention to it, mistaking it simply for a big aerolite. The contemporary beings will probably never see it again, since it had become quite proper to their nature to see only unreality. Let us give them their due. During recent centuries, they have really most artistically mechanized themselves to see nothing real. So, my boy, owing to all the aforesaid, there first arose on this planet Earth also, as there should, what are called similitudes of the whole, or as they are also called, microcosmoses, and further, there were formed from these microcosmoses what are called Oduristelnian and Polormedekhtic vegetations. Still further, as also usually occurs, from the same microcosmoses, there also began to be grouped various forms of what are called Tetartocosmoses of all three brain systems. And among these latter, there then first arose just those biped Tetartocosmoses, whom you a while ago called slugs. About how and why upon planets, during the transition of the fundamental sacred laws into Ilnosoparno, there arise similitudes of the whole, and about what factors contribute to the formation of one or another of these, as they are called, system of being brains, and also about all the laws of world creation and world maintenance in general, I will explain to you specially some other time. But meanwhile, know that these three-brained beings arising on that planet Earth who interest you had in them, in the beginning, the same possibilities for perfecting the functions for the acquisition of being reason, as have all other forms of Tetartocosmoses arising throughout the whole universe. But afterwards, just in the period when they also, as it proceeds on other similar planets of our great universe, were beginning gradually to be spiritualized by what is called being instinct, just then, unfortunately for them, there befell a misfortune which was unforeseen from above and most grievous for them. Chapter 10. Why Men Are Not Men. Beelzebub sighed deeply and continued to speak as follows. After actualizing on this planet of the Ilnosoparnian process, 1 year by objective time calculation passed. During this period there had gradually been coordinated on this planet also the corresponding processes or the involution and evolution of everything arising there. And of course there began gradually to be crystallized in the three-brained beings there the corresponding data for the acquisition of objective reason. In short, on this planet also everything had then already begun to proceed in the usual normal order. And therefore, my boy, if the Most High Commission, under the supreme direction of the same Archangel Sakhaki had not, at the end of a year, gone there again, perhaps all the subsequent misunderstandings connected with the three-brained beings arising on that ill-fated planet might not have occurred. This second descent of the Most High Commission to that planet was due to the fact that in spite of the measures they had taken, of which I have told you, there had not yet crystallized in the reasons of the majority of its sacred members a complete assurance of the impossibility of any undesirable surprise in the near future, and they now wish to verify on the spot of the results of those measures. It was just during this second descent that the Most High Commission decided, in any event, if only for the sake of their own reassurance, to actualize certain further special measures, among which was also that measures, the consequences of which have not only gradually turned into a stupendous terror for the three-brained beings themselves who arise on this ill-fated planet, but have even become, so to say, a malignant sore for the whole of the great universe. You must know that by the time of this second descent of the Most High Commission, there had already gradually been engendered in them, as is proper to three-brained beings, what is called mechanical instinct. The sacred members of this Most High Commission then reasoned that if the said mechanical instinct in these imbibed three-brained beings of that planet should develop towards the attainment of objective reason, as usually occurs everywhere among three-brained beings, then it might quite possibly happen that they would prematurely comprehend the real cause of their arising and existence and make a great deal of trouble. It might happen that, having understood the reason for their arising, namely, that by their existence they should maintain the detached fragments of their planet, and being convinced of this their slavery to circumstances utterly foreign to them, they would be unwilling to continue their existence and would on principle destroy themselves. So, my boy, in view of this, the Most High Commission then decided, among other things, provisionally to implant into the common presences of the three-brained beings there a special organ with a property such that, at first, they should perceive reality topsy-turvy, and, second, that every repeated impression from outside should crystallize in them data which would engender factors for evoking in them sensations of pleasure and enjoyment. And then, in fact, with the help of the chief common universal arch-chemist physicist, Angel Anulios, who was also among the members of this Most High Commission, they caused to grow in the three-brained beings there, in a special way, at the base of their spinal column, at the root of their tail, which they also at that time still had, and which part of their common presences furthermore still had its normal exterior expressing the, so to say, fullness of its inner significance, a something which assisted the arising of the said properties in them. And this something they then first called the organ Kundabuffer. Having made this organ grow in the presences of the three-brained beings, and having seen that it would work, the Most High Commission, consisting of sacred individuals headed by the Archangel Sakhaki, reassured and with good consciences, returned to the center. While there, on the planet Earth, which had taken your fancy, the action of this astonishing and exceedingly ingenious invention began from the first day to develop, and developed, as the wise Maulana Sa'adin would say, like a Jericho trumpet in crescendo. Now, in order that you may have at least an approximate understanding of the results of the properties of the organ devised and actualized by the incomparable angel Anulios, blessed be his name to all eternity, it is indispensable that you should know about the various manifestations of the three-brained beings of that planet, not only during the period when this organ Kundabuffer existed in their presences, but also during the later periods, when although this astonishing organ and its properties had been destroyed in them, nevertheless, owing to many causes, the consequences of its properties had begun to be crystallized in their presences. But this I will explain to you later. Meanwhile, you must know that there was still a third descent of that Most High Commission to that planet. 3 years later, according to objective time calculations, but this time it was under the direction of the most great Arch-Seraph Subhartha, the most great Archangel Sakhaki, having, in the meantime, become worthy to become the divine individual he now is, namely, one of the 4 quarter maintainers of the whole universe. And during just this third descent there, when it was made clear by the thorough investigations of the sacred members of this third Most High Commission, that for the maintenance of the existence of those said detached fragments, there was no longer any need to continue in actualization of the deliberately taken anticipatory measures. Then, among the other measures there was also destroyed, with the help of the same arch-chemist physicist Angel Anulios, in the presences of the three-brained beings there, the said organ Kundabuffer with all its astonishing properties. But let us return to the tale I began. Now listen. When our confusion, caused by the recent catastrophe that had menaced that whole solar system, had passed off, we slowly, after this unexpected interruption, resumed the settlement of our new place on the planet Mars. Little by little, we all of us made ourselves familiar with the local nature and adapted ourselves to the existing conditions. As I have already said, many of us definitely settled down on the planet Mars, and others by the ship occasion, which had been put at the disposal of the beings of our tribe for interplanetary communication, either went or prepared to go to exist on other planets of the same solar system. But I, with my kinsmen and some of my near attendants, remained to exist on that planet Mars. Yes, I must note that by the time to which my tale refers, my first Teskooano had already been set up in the observatory which I had constructed on the planet Mars, and I was just then devoting myself entirely to the further organization and development of this observatory of mine. For the more detailed observation of the remote concentrations of our great universe and of the planets of this solar system. Among the objects of my observations then was also this planet Earth. Time passed. The process of existence on this planet also began gradually to be established, and it seemed, from all appearances, that the process of existence was proceeding there just as on all other planets. But by close observation, first, it could be clearly seen that the numbers of these three-brained beings there gradually increasing, and secondly, it was possible sometimes to observe very strange manifestations of theirs. That is, from time to time, there is something which was never done by three-brained beings on other planets, namely, they would suddenly, without rhyme or reason, begin destroying one another's existence. Sometimes these destructions of one another's existence proceeded there not in one region alone, but in several, and would last not just one Dionosic, but many Dionosic, and sometimes even for whole Ornakras. Dionos signifies day, Ornakras signifies month. It was sometimes very noticeable also that from this horrible process of theirs, their numbers rapidly diminished. But on the other hand, during other periods when there was a lull in these processes, their numbers also very noticeably increased. To this peculiarity of theirs we gradually got used, having explained it to ourselves that obviously, for certain higher considerations, these properties also must deliberately have been given to the organ Kundabuffer by the Most High Commissions. In other words, seeing the fecundity of these vived beings, we assumed that this has been done with a forethought, in view of the necessity that they should exist in such large numbers for the needs of the maintenance of the common cosmic harmonious movement. Had it not been for this strange peculiarity of theirs, then it would never have entered anybody's head that there was anything queer on that planet. During the period to which the aforesaid refers, I visited most of the planets of that solar system, the populated and the as yet unpopulated. Personally, I liked best of all the three-centered beings breeding on the planet bearing the name Saturn, whose exterior is quite unlike ours, but resembles that of the being bird raven. It is interesting, by the way, to remark that for some reason or other, the form of being bird raven breeds not only on almost all the planets of this solar system, but almost on most of those other planets of the whole of our great universe, upon which beings of various brain systems arise, and are coated with planetary bodies of different forms. The verbal intercourse of these beings, ravens, of that planet Saturn, is something like ours. But in regard to their utterance, it is, in my opinion, the most beautiful of any I have ever heard. It can be compared to the singing of our best singers when, with all their being, they sing in a minor key. And as for their relations with others, I don't even know how to describe them, can be known only by existing among them and by experiencing them oneself. All that can be said is that these bird beings have hearts exactly like those of the angels nearest our endless Maker and Creator. They exist strictly according to the 9th commandment of our Creator, namely, do unto another's as you would do unto your own. Later, I must certainly tell you much more in detail about those three-brained beings who also arise and exist on the planet Saturn, since one of my real friends during the whole period of my exile in that solar system was a being of just that planet, who had the exterior coating of a raven, and whose name was Harharkh.